Welcome to another Digital Anarchy tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to talk about our new free filter, Cartoon Bubble, which is sort of designed to work with our Toonit Photoshop filter. Although of course Cartoon Bubble is a standalone filter by itself and you certainly don't have to use Toonit. You can certainly apply it to regular photos or other images that you've stylized in one way or another. But it's a pretty simple filter, so let's jump into it. And of course we have a image here that we used Toonit on, which is a great plugin for giving photos a cartoon look. But let's go down to Digital Anarchy and select Cartoon Bubble. And you can see that Mom is saying anarchy is like chicken soup. It's very much true. It's very similar to chicken soup. And let's resize the window here so we can kind of see our controls. And there's also some controls off the edge of the screen, such as our OK button, but we'll see that in a second. So you can see that I've got a bubble here. We can resize this by grabbing the bounding box and moving that around. We can click on the bubble itself and move that. And we can see the full bounding box, and we'll scale that down even more. If we click outside of the bounding box, that will move our kind of speaking indicator. And you can move that wherever you want it, and we'll kind of put it right by our mouth. Now you can also adjust the size of this by the width and height parameters down here, but it's generally much easier just to grab the bounding box and move that around. And again, I can click on the bubble and move that, click outside the bounding box and it moves the indicator. Now we can also adjust the indicator width if we want something a little bit skinnier. We can do that. If we want something that's a little bit fatter, we can also do that. In this case, I think a smaller one is kind of in order here. We can also change the ellipse to a rectangle. So you can have a square bubble. Hopefully in future versions of this we'll add in like starbursts and other types of bubbles, but right now it's just limited to a rectangle and an ellipse. We can of course change the text down here if we want. So if we want to get rid of the Mom Says part, we can just delete that. And that'll update the text in the bubble. Now the text engine here is not the most robust text engine in the world. It's certainly not quite as good as what you'll find within Photoshop itself. It's good for previewing and, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, can certainly be good enough for the final render. But you might just want to replace it with the text that you can generate within Photoshop. Generally gives you a few more options. But you can come over here and click on the font button and select from the different fonts, the different sizes, different styles. You can change the color if you want. Now there is a bug in this version where the color chip doesn't actually show up, but if I click OK, you'll see that the text actually has taken on the color. So that's just a little bit of a known bug. But everything else in here works pretty well. We can change the bubble color if we want. If we want to make this, say, reverse these colors, make the bubble black with a white outline, we can certainly do that. Or you can use, of course, any color. You can also change the thickness of the outline by adjusting these sliders. Now one thing to know is that the sliders only go up to 20. However, you can enter in a value up to 100. So if we want to make these outlines really fat, we can do that. Just type in the value there and it'll work fine. Now if I try and type in something really huge, it's limited to just between 0 and 100. Now this is all relative to the size of your image, so on a larger image, 100, or in this case, let's drop this back down to 20, will not look quite as thick relative to the size of the image. So that's always something to keep in mind. The indicator has its own thickness value, and we can crank that up as well, or just kind of leave that down a little bit thinner. And so those are kind of the basic controls for Cartoon Bubble. There is also, if I move the interface over, a preset manager. So if you have a bubble that you want to apply to different images, you can always just save it as a preset. All this stuff is actionable, so you can use this as part of an action or part of a batch process. And then once you're done with everything, you just kind of click on OK. And this will take us back out to Photoshop. And now our tuned image has a nice cartoon bubble to go along with it. Now in this case, I've applied it to the same layer. I can undo this and let's create a new layer. And I can go back into Cartoon Bubble. And all my settings will have been remembered. So we can now reapply this to our transparent layer. And you can see the bubble is now on its own separate layer. And of course we can do the normal things like grab our move tool and move this around. So you don't have to apply it to the same layer as your cartooned image. So that's pretty much it for Cartoon Bubble. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. There's lots of other tutorials on digitalanarchy.com, along with free demo filters, or in the case of Cartoon Bubble, just flat out free filter. But we have trial versions of all our other products and all sorts of other assorted goodies. So definitely swing by the website and check it all out. And thanks for joining me.